Draga braćo I sestre,
Dear brothers and sisters, dear parishioners, dear pilgrims, dear friends of Medjugorje, friends of Gospas, our Blessed Mother, friends of the Queen of Peace throughout the world, connected with the Gospa, with all that she has been telling us. All of you who have opened yourselves to her and her callings, calling to peace and prayer. I greet you all with all my heart and wish to address you in a few words from here, from your and ours Medjugorje. The Lent is behind us, Easter is here. It is an invitation to all of us to Easter within us. This year the Lent and Easter are special. We all know what we have been going through and what we are still experiencing due to this epidemic of coronavirus. But this is the time of silence. The same time Jesus is talking about to his disciples on Mount Tabor when his transfiguration took place. After his transfiguration, he says to disciples not to tell about what they saw to anybody until the Son of Man resurrects. This time of epidemic of coronavirus, as we have been left without the Eucharist, without community prayer, without the sacrament of confession, without that possibility to participate together and share. But this time exactly is the time of silence, the time of not speaking to others, the time to dive deeper into our own inner self, the time to allow God to transform us. Why does Jesus forbid disciples to speak to others about experience they had, the experience of his transfiguration? Because he wants transfiguration to take place within them in order to be able then to speak to others about his transfiguration. Without that experience of inner personal transfiguration and conversion of heart, their speaking about it would be like giving fruits to others that are not yet ripe. Fruits have to first mature within them. Inner transformation has to happen first within them. This time, the situation in which we all find ourselves actually is the time when, as Gospa, our Mother, is telling us, we are to let God speak to us. This is the time of prayer. It is a time for exactly that what is happening in the nature. Mother says it nicely. She's directing our eyes toward nature, toward what is happening just now in nature, in spring. She says that nature, in a silence, quietly, is struggling for a new life. And when we put all this together, now we understand what is it that Mother wants. She wants us all to open ourselves to God, just as nature opens itself to sun and its form. She wants to see us in prayer, opening ourselves to His love, the love of God and God's warmth, allowing Him to speak to our hearts, to allow the rays of His love to touch our very being, to bring warmth and peace into our being, just as the rays of sun are touching plants in nature, enabling inner transformation in silence to take place, and first buds are shining, showing up. Everything is changing. Blessed Mother is calling us to return to Jesus. Return. How to return to Him? She says return through prayer and fasting. What is prayer? What is fasting? Prayer means to direct our eyes and hearts to God, to open one's heart to the love of God. Fasting means to let go of everything which is taking our attention away from God, that is turning me away from Him and prayer. Letting go of all that, all these obstacles, that is what fasting is. Letting go, renouncing it, and to return to God, just as the prodigal son returns to his father. So this time in which we are now is the time of the prodigal son, time of silence, time to return to ourselves, meditating, reflecting, realizing where and when have I gone astray so far, further away from Jesus, away from prayer, away from fasting, away from the Word of God, away from members of my family and true values. When did it all happen? You see, this is the time when I'm going back to God, turning myself toward Him again, to Jesus, to prayer. And in all that, Mary is an example to us. She is the person who opens herself to the Lord, allowing Him to speak to her. Here I am, O Lord, let it be done unto me according to thy word. That means allowing God through opening of our heart, and it happens always in silence. When angel spoke to Mary, Saint Luke wrote this down. Mary was confused and started to wonder what did these words mean. She is pondering deep in her inner self and remains quiet, silent. Mary kept all these things, reflecting on them in her heart. Again she enters in her inner self and in silence. Once again, his mother kept all these memories, reflecting on them in her heart, in silence. That is what Jesus talks about when it is said that Father sees what is hidden in our hearts. So enter your room. Dear friends, we can understand this situation in two different ways. We can understand it as something imposed to us, and it is, since none of us asked for it. We can wail and lament over it, lament over not having something, not being able to go to Holy Mass, no possibility to go to adoration, to go for a sacrament of confession. We are not allowed to go outside. We don't have so many things. That is one way of seeing things. But let us recall Israelites when they were coming out of Egypt. They were also wailing and protesting that what they had was a miserable food, and they were got sick of eating manna, bread from heaven. Remember Jesus when in deserted region, surrounded by crowds of people who listened to him, wanted to feed them. He asked the apostles what did they have. They said only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And Jesus multiplied and fed the crowds. We too can do the same, focusing our eyes on what we not on what we do not have, but what not what we are lacking. But there is another way to see things. Take this time as the time of grace, as the time granted to all of us for our inner transformation. It is time to open our hearts to God. It is time to calm down, to be quiet, to stop, to pause. This time exactly is teaching me not to haste, not to rush into anything. It is the time when I can have a time for a prayer, for the Word of God, for members of my family. Dear friends, it is Easter. Very special Easter, and it can truly become special. We can experience it as true Easter. Jesus' Easter took place in silence. It happened when nobody was looking. We too find ourselves in the silence of our room and our home. This is where Jesus wants to be resurrected. He wants Easter to happen within us, now and here, exactly where we are. And Easter will happen within us only if each one of us come out of one's own grave, in which perhaps I find myself right now, the grave of negative thoughts, negative feelings towards certain people. When I start wishing only the best for the others, this is when little by little my coming out of grave and resurrection, Easter, is taking place, to desire all the best to the others. Also, when I decide to forgive, that is coming out of the grave too. When I start praying for love toward person I do not love, somebody I cannot stand, somebody who hurt me, when I start praying in my heart for the gift of love for that person, that is my coming out of the grave. When I decide to see that what is good, that what has been already given to me as a gift, to see all the creatures in the nature, God's creatures, when I realize how much God has already granted me, this is when my coming out of the grave and Easter do take place, a new life, resurrection. Dear friends, this is what I wish to you from the bottom of my heart. Happy and blessed Easter. Sretan Uskrs.